You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Okay, here we are, another edition of Global Trade This Week. It comes to you weekly, as in the name, and it's brought to you by CAP Logistics. Please visit them at caplogistics.com. But I should rewind and introduce myself. I'm Doug Draper. I'm one of your co-hosts, and the other co-host and my partner in crime on the other side of the country is Mr. Pete Mento. Pete, how you doing, man?
I'm all right, Doug. I'm in a significant amount of pain. I doubled up on classes for jiu-jitsu this morning, and that might not have been a good idea. So every joint in my body is screaming at me for the stupid decision that I made today.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say which joint, because it's not muscles, it's joints in a sport like that.
Yeah. Shoulders, elbows, definitely wrists today, and I don't want to say I'm getting too old for it, but man, I'm definitely paying for it today.
Yes. Well, with that being said, so you can pop your Advil here in a bit. We'll just let you kick this. We'll let you kick this week off, my friend.
Well, going back to what seems like a broken record with never-ending inflation, we got to talk about how it's hitting another part of our world, buddy. And we talk a lot about agriculture, you and I, and this is certainly no different today. A lot of the inputs that go into successful modern agriculture are getting more and more expensive. Some of them are things that we could actually control. And the two I want to talk about the most today are fertilizer, which is experiencing just really unheard of increases. In some instances, 200 to 300% increases in its costs, as well as LNG, liquid natural gas, liquid propane gas, which is increasing in some markets as much as 100% in its cost. You have to remember that when you and I go to Target, or when we go to wherever to get the tank filled up for the barbecue, that's one price. But we're not talking about getting a little bit of LNG. We're talking about getting a lot. And when you talk about that mass amounts of it, it could be as much as double the price that it was last year. So the cost of creating the food that America needs is going through the roof. The cost of transporting it is going through the roof. The cost of storing it is going through the roof. And then once it finally gets to the stores, there has to be some type of margin on it. The margin on food is relatively low. It always has been. We're talking single-digit amounts. So it's not like the corporations are doing everything they can to stick it to us. They're just trying to make the same types of margins that they always have. And then keeping it fresh as well as expensive because of the energy that's put into keeping things temperature controlled on their journey. And then the labor on top of all that. Doug, we talked about this last time, I think, or two weeks ago. I'm not quite sure which one it was. I think we're staring down the barrel of a summer and a fall of just unheard of, unheralded costs for food in this country. And I think it's going to be much, much, much worse outside of the United States, where they don't necessarily have the ability to just churn food out like we do. And I think it's going to be a global humanitarian crisis if something isn't done soon.
So do we put this in the category of death of hope? That's the one question that I have.
I think we do, bud. Yeah, we're all going to starve to death. My diet's been killing it. But maybe I don't think I want to diet this way. I think that's a type of diet I don't think I'm ready for, pal.
Yeah. The one thing, and I'm not the economist, I've made that mention multiple times, but the one piece when you kicked this over to me a little bit ago was the financial implications with farmers. When the inputs go up, that's going to screw up the cash flow. That means they got to outlay before they can grow, and that means they got to go to the bank, and the interest rates are going up, and they may not be able to borrow as much as they want. They may not be able to get access to as much as they need. And if you can only buy or only finance enough, your crop yield could go down. So that was something that I'm like, hey, the whole financial aspect of this, especially the outlay up front, you got an input, like you said, which is a perfect word, that's doubled or tripled. You need that to produce food. And so that was the one piece that caught my attention was like, the whole banking aspect of this could have an impact as well, which is like the quadruple or fifth whammy that you just walked through.
Yeah, Doug, it's an excellent point. You're going to have people that have to borrow money at higher interest rates than ever. For some, that may scare them away, and for some of these farmers, they've been dealing with difficult times that could be affecting credit ratings. So that could raise those interest rates even higher. Let's also not forget we're in a labor crisis. So while all of this other stuff is going on, trying to find qualified labor at harvest time, trying to find qualified labor to work on farm equipment, work on farms, drivers, all of it, it has a knock-on effect back the other direction of the supply chain. And I think it's going to increase costs the whole way around. I'm really concerned about this one. I'm not stockpiling food under the bed, but I am concerned about this one.
Yeah. Well, that's a
what
tough
act. Doug?
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow. Anyway, I've spoken about this one in the past related to our buddies at the USPS, and it just strikes me time and time again that I want these guys to succeed so much, Pete. It's unbelievable. But I think it's the biggest missed opportunity in the supply chain and logistics world that nobody's talking about. So here's another example. Like a month ago or something, the USPS announced a new service called Connect, USPS Connect. And it's focused on small business, and there's local connect, and there's regional and national, and they're focused on returns. And I started thinking to myself, wait, isn't this what they already do anyway? Like, I'm looking for the splash in the headline, right? Like what they're outlining here, other than rebranding it as USPS Connect. I didn't see a whole lot of monumental change that could move the needle, with them really taking advantage of this logistics craziness that we're in and the e-commerce bubble. I kind of was liking it to this couple in the 1950s, right? So the dad's sitting there having his breakfast. He's got his pipe. He's got the newspaper out. You can't see his face because it's in the newspaper. And his wife says, "Hey, look, honey, the USPS has a new service called Connect. It was just announced." And he doesn't even look up from his paper, and he goes, "That's nice, honey. Can you pass the sugar?" So what I'm saying is that this is just, in my opinion, another missed opportunity, another example of how the post office is not wrapping their head around the opportunity that's in front of them. I want them to succeed. They need to succeed. And if there is never an opportunity for them to jump and take advantage of the changing buying habits, demographics, that everything, it's just right there in front of them. And I don't understand why people aren't recognizing that. And I know there's bureaucracy, and I know there's processes and barriers and all that kind of stuff. But, it seems that the Postmaster General could do something to create urgency, because there's companies that are crushing it financially, and that is what the post office needs. So part of me wants to knock on the post office and say, "Hey, McFly, hello." But part of me is like, he's like a kid in an Easter egg hunt where the Easter egg is right there in front of him. And the kid who's like 4 years old is walking in a circle, and you're like, "Hey, no, it's right here. This is where the Easter egg is. This is how you can improve your revenue and get out of the damn hole you've been talking about for decades." So I don't know, Pete, I brought it up again. It just strikes me as odd that it just continues to be oblivious on what the post office needs to do to just take advantage of the situation, and it's just not happening.
You really claim to love them. I think you hate the post office. I love the post office, and I love them despite their difficult operating procedures. They are under unprecedented regulatory red tape, man. They can't just pick up and change things without a tremendous amount of input and frustration, and the hierarchy that they are involved in and the regulatory morass that they are engaged in it's unheralded, man. They can't just change on a dime. I've been involved in the inner workings of that organization, Broham, and it's not as easy as you like to think it is. So I'm with you and rooting for them. Huge fan. But I think given the circumstances of what they're up against, they do an exceptionally good job. We need to be a little more understanding. They've been taking excellent advantage of the 301 de minimis program. I think that if they just continue to slowly and steadily do that, they will end up being, for e-commerce, the service of record, because they are so inexpensive. They do have the ability to get to every home so quickly. And in that service, it's more about repeatable delivery in a way that is predictable, more so than it is one about getting people data and information, which is where UPS and FedEx really do excel. So, no, man, people want their postal services cheap and predictable more so than they want them fast and flashy. And that's why you'll always have UPS and FedEx and DHL.
Yeah. Well, it's a leadership void, because you're exactly right. They're talking about this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They need, I get it. It's the government, it's bureaucracy, but gosh darn it, it's not a new topic. I don't know. I understand what you're saying. There is bureaucracy. It's poor leadership. And they just got to do something. God bless, the Easter egg is right there to take. They're walking around it. They can't figure it out. They've been talking about it for literally decades. So,
Doug, I'm going to get you an interview to be Postmaster General. I think you get a uniform like the Surgeon General gets. I'm not sure. I think you might get a uniform like you get a military uniform. You might finally get the kind of security that you deserve. You might get some some federal protection wherever you go. You might get like Post Office One. You get your own plane, I think. I don't know, it'd be pretty cool. But if you could be in charge of it, I think you should put your career where your mouth is and take over the Postal Service, my friend.
Well, I don't see what. Have them fax to me a pamphlet that they wrote 15 years ago that'll help explain the problems at the post office, because I've heard it all before.
You probably have to take a pay cut too. I don't think you think that very much. Great benefits. Yeah, great benefits. So that gets us to halftime, buddy. So I saw your halftime, and I just know if it's going where I think it's going, we are going to have such a problem today. So let's just get to it, man.
You want me to go first?
Oh, boy, do I ever. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is for probably about a decade now. This has been a big deal in Colorado. And since today is April 18th, that means in 48 hours, it's going to be April 20th, also known as 420. So I would be remiss doing the show from Colorado and not make reference to this. So I did a little research on this, and this is kind of cool. This is not a joke, all right? And I did not know this until I did some research. So the history of 420 is not, a penal code for police officers in California, but literally it's 3 teenagers in California that would meet after school at this wall outside. I think it was San Pedro High School or something like that. They'd meet at a wall, and there was a rumor that there was a grow operation that had been abandoned near their school. And they would meet at this wall, and they ended up nicknaming themselves the Waldos, which there's a band by that same name out there. And they would get together at 4:20 in the afternoon to go try to find this hidden grow operation. And they'd always meet by this wall, by this statue of Louis Pasteur. So initially it was called 420 Louis, and that's how it got started. Then here's the cool thing, and it goes on to your shirt, related to the shirt you're wearing today, Pete, is that these guys' parents had some connection with the Grateful Dead. One of the guys' brothers worked there or something. So they had access to the Grateful Dead during concerts. They'd be backstage, the whole 9 yards. And so when there was some doobie being passed around, these high school kids made reference to 420. And that's really what took it from 3 guys hanging out on a wall, trying to find a secret abandoned grow operation, to the term that it's been divined into right now. So, Pete, that is no joke. That is the scenario behind it. So, as I said, a couple things, then I'll let you chime in because I know you have comments on this. 420 is not a penal code, but Bob Marley's son actually was born on April 20th. Okay, so there's 420 is not tea time in Amsterdam. I know people have said that. Nope. But in Colorado, Pete, there's a mile marker on I-70 that was mile marker 420 that got stolen about every other day. So they changed it to mile marker 419.99. So it says 419.99. And the last thing, Pete, not every clock in Pulp Fiction was set to 420, right? Didn't happen. But there was a dude on Price is Right. This is the Bob Barker era, that everything that he'd been on, he just said 420. And I'm sure you can go and find that out there, especially this time of year. So there's my 420 summary, Pete. I'm throwing it. This is a softball, man. I'm tossing it back to you for any feedback you got.
The fact that you're the guy that brought up 420 on the show and not me is so hysterical. It's so hysterical and so wrong. I'm a dabbler in the recreational herb. It should not come as a shock to anyone. I've enjoyed THC since my youth, and I've always thought it was stupid. I've always hated this notion. Well, do I need, like I do not like any of the goofiness that comes from the childish goofiness that comes from smoking. I hearken it to drinking games. Doug, drinking is not a game, right? Drinking is something that should be done with reckless abandon or responsibility, but nothing in between. So this idea that, it's something that I see people that are not old enough to understand what they're doing smoking for 20. You should not be engaging in recreational drug use if you are not of age to be able to do it. So I've always been like, So when I come to Colorado and I see people who just have like a whole lifestyle that revolves around smoking dope, I'm like, don't you have anything else to do? Like every conversation goes toward, it's like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or being a vegan. Like every conversation goes towards BJJ or veganism, but in this case, it's weed. And that's why coming to Denver, I always run into those people, and it drives me crazy. So I love it. I didn't know any of this, Doug. You've taught me something. So thank you. Thank you very much. My halftime, yes. Not nearly as positive. Today is April the 18th, which because of the calendar is tax day. Yeah. And tax day can kiss my Granite State ass. I cannot stand paying taxes. I detest it. I wanted to let everyone know a couple of fun facts about income tax. Until 1910, there was no federal income tax. So just mull that over for a bit. We seem to have done quite well as a government and quite well as a country for some time without expecting for large, massive swaths of your personal income to be taken away by the federal government. How did we make up for that? Funny enough, we did it through import taxes, tariffs, all sorts of luxury taxes that came on imported goods, did it through mining taxes, lots of excise taxes, which is an interesting way, excising things from the earth, things like oil, ore, as well as a lot of interesting taxes that were associated with communication, a lot of interesting things with them. Now, when people began to get a little too wealthy, think robber barons, we decided to implement a 1% income tax, 2% income tax. Now, of course, income taxes of 20, 25%, in some cases 33, 37% are the norm in this country. And globally, we actually don't have income taxes as bad as many other parts of the world. And on top of that, our state income taxes, our state sales taxes, in some places, city income taxes, as well as county and regional income taxes. And depending on where you live, you could give up more than half of your income every year to the government for services. I hate taxes. I cannot stand them. I have been flayed alive by the IRS, and I get very interested, Doug. Tax day is a day that it makes me want to just choke someone very hard. And I look at government spending. That will be another halftime when we can go into some of the things that we spend money on. But if you were to look at the amount of money that is spent, the amount of money that's spent on business, the amount of money that's spent on the government, how things are spent in comparison, the amount of cash that is taken from the typical American, you get angry too.
Mm. Well, the motto of the state you live in is live free or die. Doesn't surprise me.
Amy and I were driving back from church yesterday, or day before yesterday. I forget which day. We're Saturday. We're coming back from, I don't know where we're coming back from. or getting coffee, and we're talking about moving. And I said, no matter where we go, we're going to get hammered. You can live anywhere. You're going to get hammered by the tax man. Doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. It's part of, this wonderful fantasy that we have, that we give the government money and they give us so much wonderfulness in return. They do not. It is all a fantasy. Enjoy your fantasy.
Nice. Well, between the post office and the political rants, or the taxation rants, this show is dramatically changing direction. Yeah. It's called mission creep. I learned that term the other day. I'll explain that one later. Not this show, a later show.
Yeah. It's a good thing Keenan's not on, because everyone knows that he actually manages this from a cabin in the woods while he writes his manifesto. So I'm sure he has opinions as well. That brings us to topic number 2. That was Halftime, brought to you by our good friends at Caplogistics, who bring you the show, bring you all the great technical resources. We should probably mention that our opinions are not theirs or our employers. Mm-hmm. And they're definitely Keenan's, though. So anything we say, Keenan totally agrees with, I think. I'm not sure.
He totally told us to say it is the problem. He basically said, say this as loud and as boisterous as you can.
Because I completely agree. Yeah. To learn more about Caplogistics and the wonderful things that they do, visit them at caplogistics.com. Now, my second topic is really crazy. There are about 400 million people in China right now that are on lockdown, which means that they are not allowed to leave their homes. They have the ability to send someone out to get food on occasion, but right now people are having their food delivered. They're being told through drones to get off of their balconies and get back into their homes. Are you kidding me? And now food delivery services are failing. So you were at least getting regular deliveries of food brought to your home. What most people who've maybe never traveled or lived in Asia don't know is that in that particular part of the world, you don't do a lot of frozen food shopping. You don't keep a lot in the larder, as it were. You get food every day. You go to the market very regularly, and you like to have fresh food in the house. So they're about to have some real political problems with people who have been cooped up and now are unable to even get the basics like food delivered to their home. When you have, however, a significant portion of your elderly who have simply not been vaccinated, there are very few other ways to try to keep them safe. And we've seen it in Shanghai, Shenzhou last week. They had that first droplings of it happen. But the kickdown effect of this on global shipping, global manufacturing, international trade, it is massive. Once Shanghai opens up again, the fire hose of cargo that will be heading toward the United States is going to be outrageous. And that bump we're going to see of stuff that's missing, things that will not be on the shelf for back to school, as an example, the things that will not be on the shelf for summertime, they're not going to be here, the things that would normally have been here for the summer rush season. I think it's going to be pretty interesting all over again. And it's just going to push back again how much longer we're all going to be waiting for us to get back to normal with regards to the supply chain.
Mm-hmm. Well, I made mention either last show or the show before, and it was a joke at the time. You even laughed. You may have even poked fun at me, Pete, but I can take that. So I'm going to take this to the next level, and I believe this, Pete. I believe this with my heart. This is pandemic posturing, and who benefits from the chaos of the supply chain that's in right now to advance the CCP mentality is China, and manipulating their citizens is something that they have done in the past. We've seen it recently. I think part of it is related to put themselves in a stronger position globally, because this can create chaos, just like you said. The fire hose, when you use terms like fire hose, stuff not on shelves, those are all things that define control, and that control originates in China. And if they withhold for a period of time, whether that's withholding people, processes, ships, the one that has control is going to be the victor in their eyes. So I truly believe that there is some pandemic posturing going on here, Pete.
Well, that's a little too James Bond for me. I think that if you are a centrally controlled communist government, it's probably easier to do lockdowns and keep people under control than if you're the United States. I mean, one thing we've definitely learned from the pandemic is that most Americans don't like being told what to do. And I don't think that anyone likes being told what to do, but authoritarian governments are able to do it with a tremendous amount more authority and, panache than we can here in the U.S. You talked about the state I live in. New Hampshire didn't have much of a lockdown. And when it became very clear early on in the pandemic that people here were not going to put up with it, sort of that underground economy of things opening up and no one doing anything about it, gyms, restaurants serving food outside. I mean, we were one of the earliest states to just say, we're like a smaller version of Florida. China's not like that, man. I mean, you've been over there, haven't you? I think you've traveled over there. But
just once.
Yeah, I mean, there's a constant feeling of just understanding that there are rules here. You probably shouldn't break them. And it's not like you can't live your life. It's just the government is definitely in control. And they don't have a problem enforcing their rules. And not a whole lot of talking about it when things go sideways. You're either on the right side of the rules or you're not. So I just think it's totally different, man. I think it's totally different. And I'm not sure there's a big grand global scheme on it. I do like how you go there, though. I think it's important that we have somebody who says things like that. I don't know. It just seems too big for me.
I literally said it as a joke a couple weeks ago.
No, you're not so sure.
I'm not so sure. Anyway, maybe I'll go smoke some dope on 420 and come up with some other conspiracy.
All right, man. Here's the last one. What's your last topic?
Oh, of all of our topics, Pete, this one's the least. This one is the most mundane. But the tagline, and you like when I do this, is vertical is the new horizontal, and I'm referring to warehouses. And I think that's been talked about over the years. We've seen it overseas with warehouses going up instead of going wide. And I'm going to use Colorado as an example. There's only so much land, and because it's getting more expensive, to drop a 500,000 square foot warehouse on this massive piece of real estate where you have to have parking and trucks and access to highways and stuff, that the land is becoming so expensive, and you have to go so far out of a metro area to find land that is manageable and affordable to build these massive structures. I think you're going to see only in heavily dense metro areas where people are going to come back to city center, to use a term on House Hunters International, and you're going to see things going vertical. I know that Prologis and Amazon did something out in Seattle on this, but it keeps it centralized. It's hyper-focused on e-commerce, and it can be a cross-dock as much as a warehouse for multimodal. So if you bring a whole bunch of trucks in with stuff to this vertical warehouse, and you can have cars, vans, bicycles, everybody coming in to grab that final mile. So as e-commerce continues to grow, I think you're going to see the vertical nature of warehousing. It's not the traditional warehouse where you're like, hey, let's take 50,000 square feet over 20 acres of land and let's just turn it up into the air. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be an adjunct that is going to go vertical in metro areas, and you're going to have different modes of cross-dock. And I think, Pete, you're going to see some returns management there with pop-up stores that are going to resell returns. It's only going to work in heavily dense metro areas, but I think that's coming. It started with Amazon and Prologis in Seattle. I think you're going to see more of that in the upcoming year to 18 months.
I love this idea of warehouses going up and not out. Vertical racking was a godsend in the 80s and 90s, and it continues to be. The use of smart racking, the use of intelligent software, barcoding, to make it even more densely racked, more densely populated with product, and they're using robotics to get to that stuff, get to where it needs to be and pulling it. The idea of using vertical buildings in large population centers that would have been used for business and racking those with elevators, having it right there where everybody is, and being able to use those to get stuff out for e-commerce is a great idea. And then that last piece that you jumped on, how are we going to deal with returns is a question that every e-commerce company is always talking about. Even when they feel confident about answering it, they always want to hear more. Everybody wants to talk more about how are we going to get this stuff back into circulation. So the idea of a pop-up engaged with also a warehouse is a great idea. And being able to do that around a lot of people who will probably want to buy those things is also a great idea. So, Doug, you touched on a lot of very insightful concepts there. I hope somebody other than the three of us were listening to them because they're great ideas.
Yeah, for sure. So what does that leaves us with the show's almost complete.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take those ideas, by the way. I mean, I happen to work for one of those big e-commerce companies, so I might mention them.
I know.
But in any case, that's going to do it for us this week, Doug, on Global Trade This Week, brought to you by our good friends at Cap Logistics. We always work very hard every week to talk about not what is happening, but what we really believe will be happening, to try to spend some time talking about the topics that most people probably aren't focusing on, maybe don't want to throw an opinion to the wolves on. And more importantly, we try to make it fun and interesting for all of you. So thank you to Cap Logistics for giving us this platform. Thank you to Keenan for keeping it up on the web. And thank you to all of you who continue to listen to us ramble like the doddering old men that we are, for telling your friends about the show. And thank you, Doug, for being an incredible partner on the show and for keeping it factual to my fun. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. I'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.
All right. See everybody. Take care.